program today we're going to be looking at the bull sales, and then we also going to unravel some of the minefield that happens to be ACC. Interestingly enough, this week people are talking about the psyllid fly, the one that attacks tomatoes and potatoes, is going to be taken on biologically. Yes, we've got something in that's going to weed them. We're also interested to see that Bruce Willis is now on the board for Horticulture New Zealand. $384,000 has been put up by the government to help safety as far as the racing industry is concerned, and the warfare hots up over water and whether it's being wasted and stolen by farmers or whether it's media hype. And finally, of course, we've got the EU now without the UK and what's going to happen as far as the ramifications for New Zealand is concerned. But in just a moment, it's animal health, prevention and cure. Nick, I guess it's pregnancies and the effects that can have on animal health.
So it's a big big time of the year for health problems with ewes in particular, heavily pregnant ewes, and it is the time where we start to see pregnancy toxemias creeping in, sleepy sickness. As I've said on the program before, very, very difficult condition to effectively treat and much, much easier to prevent the problem happening in the first place. And it's obviously a major concern in regards to small enterprises that are relatively confined in what sort of feed they can provide to the pregnant ewe. And that should have been sort of budgeted for and a plan come up with feeding well before now. But I guess it is the time to make sure that you're not going to get caught short. And I guess the end result, the crux of the matter is getting your hand on the ewes and seeing what sort of condition they're in and making sure that they're maintaining body condition, and by inference making sure there's enough energy getting to the babies.
I was just going to say that throwing a bale of hay over the fence is not necessarily...
No, it's not. Hay, meadow hay generally, it may be an okay maintenance kind of ration, but when we're starting to talk about growing babies, it's probably not going to make the grade. So supplemental feeding is expensive and important, and if it's needed, it's better off to be planned for well in advance. And if there's a facility for the home property to conserve feed for these sort of times, then obviously that should have been thought about before now. But the result is that the ew's going to make sure that those babies growing inside her are fed in an expense to herself, and so that's where the whole problem arises. And yeah, as I say, it is a bit of a problem that we see in smaller block holdings where people struggle to maintain the right amount of nutrition getting to the pregnant ewe.
I guess on a big operation you've got green feed and all that sort of thing, but a small one you haven't got the ground for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, it's very, I've said before, 10-acre block farms in the Canterbury area.
It's any area.
Yeah, it's a very, very difficult undertaking to have a breeding program on small land areas. It's really, really difficult.
But it's a dream for having little wee lambs skipping around the paddock and amongst the daffodils.
Yeah, but we also need to. Yeah, it is a nice image that we get, and it's a traditional New Zealand image. But it's also important to keep in mind what actually decision making and management issues go into running such an enterprise, particularly during the winter months where virtually there's zero growth.
Yeah, exactly. Milk fever?
Milk fever, yep, so we see it in sheep, and we see it prior to lambing, which of course is a total opposite or different to what we see in cattle, where we see the problem when the lactation starts coming on, when the cow starts to run into difficulties in mobilising enough calcium. So in sheep, the draw, when the fetal or the baby's skeleton is starting to get calcified, the draw on the ewe system at that stage is dramatic. And so what we see is milk fever, or hypocalcemia is the term. We see this condition in ewes later in pregnancy, and we just get weak, floppy ewes on the ground, and a typical metabolic ewe would call it, and it's kind of it can be difficult on occasion to work out whether that is due to pregnancy toxemia or milk fever. I guess on the whole, milk fever ewes tend to be in better condition, and it can creep up in quite well fed ewes as well. And if we're using certain types of winter feed, it can be a problem as well.
And then we go on to abortions. It's a pretty tough old time of the year, isn't it?
It is, and abortions is a biggie. And particularly in recent years, we've had Salmonella brandenburg rear its head. We've got toxoplasma abortions, especially in younger ewes that trickle along, Campylobacter, and we also have hairy shaker virus, which is very, very related to the cow BVD or bovine viral diarrhea virus, which causes a lot of fertility problems in the cattle industry. So yeah, a number of organisms that can cause these problems. A lot of them preventable with vaccine, and really important to have a good handle on the history of a property, what's happening with your neighbours. A lot of these infectious diseases are easily spread, and it's easier to invoke protective mechanisms if you know you're in the hot zone. So yeah, I think abortion is always going to be there. One of the biggest dilemmas one faces is at what level should we be looking at investing in an investigation? And typically, I would say once you get abortion rates hitting the sort of 2% mark, you're definitely needing to get on the phone and get someone involved in looking into this.
One of the problems, though, Nick, would be that especially if you're in the high country, you don't go anywhere near the animals necessarily.
Yeah, so I mean, yeah, that can be an issue. Although a lot of lambing's done on the lower in the lower altitudes, and yeah, that can be an issue. Scanning is an important thing to talk about at the moment when we've been talking about our feed acquisition and feed requisition to different stock classes, and so preferentially feeding multi-parous ewes, for instance, triplet and twin-bearing ewes on top of singleton ewes is going to be important, as we'll make sure that the feed's going to where it needs to get.
That takes us back to the start of our conversation, doesn't it? Keeping that nutrients up to them. Yeah,
so as you said, it's a very, very busy, very technical time of the year, and a lot can go wrong, and it's working out where to go for information, where the line's drawn when you need help. And I think another timely thing to just prick the brain on is just look after yourself as well. So if we're dealing with abortions and things in particular, personal hygiene is really, really important. And not only that, by dealing with things hygienically, you're also going to go a long, long way to prevent spread. So separating affected animals out, dealing with products of abortion properly, protecting, gloving yourselves, washing your hands, preventing yourself getting sick, particularly when we're talking about things like salmonella and things like that.
Absolutely. Nick, thank you very much indeed. In just a moment, we're going to be going back to the Red Oak Angus stud and have a look and see how the sale went.
The first buller, a son of Red Oak 293, everybody, with 19 sons in the book, so he's been heavily used, and you can see why with this particular bull, as he trundles in here. He's got the qualities that holds the stud holds very relevant, ladies and gentlemen. Progeny that wean heavier, that finish quicker from moderate cows that conceive earlier and live longer. All profit drivers and very inherent in the herd here, ladies and gentlemen. That's the growth index weightings you'll see here. This particular bull, he's 6th out of his group of 121. So he's right at the top with the index here, and you follow them as they go through. Have a look with lot 1. Good luck to you here. Like the start of it 1. I'll give you 3. There you go and find him. Strong hog bull. Clear death to that bull. Lovely skin bull they all are. 3. $3,000 3. 4 there. Holding at $4,000. 5 there. High on him at 6. 3 or 6. $6,000 there. Over 8 over here. Over $8,000 8. Over $8,000 over here 8. Over $8,000 $9,000 he said. $9,000 I get 10. We're looking at the top on that bull. $9,000 at 3. Right to 8 and 9. I'll get him at a half you like. $9,000 9. 9 and a half he said. 10 where. 9.5. Go to 10 where. 10 there. 10,000 Mike your call. 10,000, 10, and I got 10, right away and biting. 10, 10 and a half. 10.5. Well, only getting better, Mike. 10.5. 10,500. 10,500, you want to live in it? 10.5 on him, 10,500 will go now. Anybody want him here? For 10.5, place him, well done. And he goes at 10.5.
Rick, the sale's over. How do you think it went?
Oh, well, I think, given the circumstances, we're pretty happy to get a few away, Rob. But, we were sort of expecting, with the way the seasons have been, there's a few cows down in the area. So, it's been, some of the sales have been a bit like that. There's a few passings, but no, we're happy with the lineup and, pleased to get a few away, that's for sure.
Interesting comments that I was getting was that the bulls look pretty good for the seasons that you've had, because you've had 2 bad ones.
Yeah, well, I suppose that's sort of, testament to the bloodlines we've been trying to breed, that, we want stuff that are going to survive, so, and they seem to be doing that. So, yeah, it's just sort of one of those things, you put them up and take what you get, and that's all you can do. So, we're sort of certainly happy with the way they look and, the way they've been going, so.
That first pen, that was brilliant stuff.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, we sort of, it's always good to get some higher prices, but, we're just, trying to get the bulls out there, and it doesn't really concern me what they sort of sell for. It's getting people to sort of try them and getting your bloodlines out there, because what we've sort of found is that our bulls seem to be lasting and doing well for people, so we just sort of need more of them trying them. It's probably one of the bad things is that we don't get many bulls break down or anything, so people seem to need less and less of them. So we've continue looking for new guys to try and get them out there, yeah.
Many of the bulls will be travelling quite some distance, so you've had some pretty good support.
Yeah, well, I think there's a lot of bulls heading south, and we have a few heading to the North Island as well. So we're probably lucky to have those sort of fellas, with the cow numbers down in our area, that that there's only you only need so many bulls, and there is a lot of bull breeders in Canterbury, so.
And of course, those that didn't sell today are still available. They're still for sale.
Oh, dead right, and that we usually get rid of them all as the season goes on. There'll be bulls that get hurt or whatever through a different through the season. People go and look at their bulls in the spring and realise they got a bull short or something like that. So no, we'll keep them on. We can also use them ourselves a bit over commercial stock and stuff like that. So yeah, no, there's a few options there.
How are the yearlings looking?
All right, yeah, they're obviously the project for next year, but we just sort of they're in a big mob sort of, and we'll have a sort up and focus on them later on. But yeah, no, they're looking okay at this stage.
And still very little rain.
Yeah, well, I mean, we've had a nice day today, and we have been getting a few frosts, but yeah, the groundwater levels are still real low, Rob. So we don't need a little bit of rain, we need a lot of rain. In the next month or two, really, we can only look forward to the spring really now, and hope we get a bit of moisture between now and then. Yeah. So
I guess the sale is over. Now you look forward to the next one.
Yeah, well, that's all you can do. So we'll enjoy catching up with a few people and. Look to where we can improve for next year. Yeah.
It keeps on coming around, doesn't it? Later in the program, we're going to be looking at the overall bull sales and how the season's been going.
Be Active begins here in the cold, clean, unpolluted southern oceans of New Zealand. Be Active amino acid biostimulant, natural, 100% pure. Manufactured from healthy deep-sea fish from sustainable New Zealand fisheries. New Zealand's Be Active Amino Acid Biostimulant, the way the world is growing. Working with nature, good for the plant, good for the planet. Now that's growing for good. You know that saying, content is king? Well, in today's mixed media world, it's true. You need video, audio, photos and more for social media, for marketing, for communications, sales and for advertising. And you need this at a price that works with your budgets. Well, that's what we do. At Tandem, we partner with you to create the content that you can use to shout to the world or video link to a few. Connect with us and we'll help you connect to the world.
We're living on a planet facing almost insurmountable challenges. Challenges we have to face sooner rather than later. The world needs our energy. She needs our ideas, our passion. It's up to us to change things, make a positive change to the planet, to feed the world, to protect the future, to live well, to be the generation that will make a change. Join us.
Everybody has a story to tell. What's yours? Maybe your family has been farming the land for 5 generations. Perhaps you have invented the next best thing in agriculture, or maybe something else. Whatever your story, if you're out on the land, we want to hear from you. Get in touch by emailing us at info@ontheland.co.nz.
Tony, there's a fair bit of controversy over stealing of water, irrigation water. Can you put it into perspective?
Yeah, look, it's a good story. It sells newspapers, I guess. But we really do need to put this into perspective. I mean, it's a relatively small number of consent holders. It was in 2013-14, and we were really just past the teething stage of having water meters put in. This was a very new activity and a very large activity, particularly for Canterbury. I mean, water meters for the large water takers had to be in by November 2012. A lot of them couldn't be put in because A, you couldn't get enough water meters into the country, B, there weren't enough registered people to put them in. And if you look at it, there's 47 odd consents, I think it was, out of something like 5,500 or 6,000 consents. So the fact that we've got a relatively small number of consents that were non-compliant in 2013-14, I think is pretty good, and it's a relatively small amount of water. I mean, it's dramatised a little bit because they talk about billions of litres of water. But if you look at what it is in comparison to the amount of groundwater that's allocated, it's 0.16%. And we're only we can only measure water with a water meter to about 5%. So, we're probably well within the margins of error of the water that's actually being measured. That has been, inverted commas, stolen. And there are some people on that list that took water and shouldn't have taken water. They knew they were doing it. There were others in there that had a very legitimate reason for their non-compliance.
I guess ECAN are really having to take it on the chin.
ECAN is taking it on the chin. It probably is a little bit of a wake-up call for them. I mean, they've also had the issue of compliance for this. I mean, when you start collecting water meter data that's being recorded every 15 minutes from several thousand bores for 365 days a year, it's a huge amount of data that has to be processed and reported on and checked to see whether or not compliance has taken place. And so it takes time to get those systems sorted. I think if you look around in 2014-15 and 2015-16, then the proportion of those people that are non-compliant has dropped off significantly.
Tony, the irrigation season.
The season. Well, we're well into supposedly winter. We've had one significant rainfall. We're still desperately in need of a large rainfall event or 2 large rainfall events. Water levels are still relatively low. Groundwater levels are still relatively low. Some of that snow we had early on is gone. So 2 of our sources of water that ends up in our groundwater are still pretty desperately short. I was in Hawke's Bay recently. Their rainfall in Hawke's Bay from about Napier south is less than 50% of average from January to June, and about over a quarter of it came in one rainfall event. So they're heading in the same direction that particularly North Canterbury has headed in. So we've got some issues with recharge, getting soils replenished, and getting set up again for the spring, which is actually just 2 months away.
This is the third one in a row.
It is the third one in a row, and that's the tough thing. I mean, one drought you can, farmers have got the resilience to deal with. Two becomes really tough, but to go 3 years in a row, that's backbreaking stuff. And look, it's not looking good right now. I mean, the only rainfall events we're getting are coming out of the northern Tasman. They're being spurned off the Queensland coast. Plenty of rain on the west coast of both islands, but very little of it is making it to the east coast.
So irrigation is now vital.
Irrigation's absolutely vital. I mean, and this coming season, we potentially have shortage in supply this year unless things turn around very quickly in the next 2 months.
Do you know what the long-term climate outlook is?
Well, the long-term climate was for what we're getting to persist for the 3 months, June to August. That doesn't augur very well, Rob. We need both in the North Island and the South Island. We need a couple of those horrible southeasterly systems that set in for several days at a time, and that everybody starts complaining about because they forgot about the fine weather that preceded them.
We are going to need some pretty serious growth.
Yes, we are going to need some serious growth, and that's why it's so important that we get our soils replenished, particularly the dryland guys. We get our soil moisture replenished. So in fact, when we get to the point where growth can take place, everything's in its favour to get going again.
It's a really tough old world out there for those guys.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, you wonder why people do this sometimes. I mean, if you've got irrigation, you've got some resilience in the system, but without irrigation, there's when you have potentially three seasons in a row, the resilience is no longer there, and I guess it becomes desperate.
It's not just the pastoral farmers.
Absolutely not. It's not just the pastoral farmers. I mean, if we go through another season like we had last year, then the dryland cropping guys everywhere, North and South Island, they're going to face the same depressed yields that we've had in the last 2 years.
In just a moment, we'll be talking bull sales, not individual ones, but across the board. Graham, the bull sale season, how's it going?
It's going not too bad actually, Rob. Every year I get very nervous before they start, but they've been going not too bad. But yeah, we've still got a few more to go yet. We've got on Monday we've got Blenheim, and then we've got Taimati, and on Tuesday we've got Woodbank and Matariki, and then on Wednesday we've got Tamania, Thursday Stern, and Friday back to Meddesley. So that'll be all the sales finished in the South Island at that stage. So we'll look forward to having those out of the way when we move up to Gisborne.
There is a lot of bulls coming onto the market.
There has been, and one of my main concerns this year was the amount of cows in North Canterbury and Marlborough. It's held up reasonably well so far, but we're getting a few passings, but we'd expected that, and to be honest, I think most of the vendors had expected that as well.
And of course, those bulls that don't actually get sold at the sale, they're still on the market.
No, that's right. Some people will probably try and get a bargain at some stage, so they'll probably go around the bull sales and try and find the bulls that they want, and then there's also other bulls sold in October, so some people wait until then. So yeah, there'll be some bulls sold after the sales, but most of the time once the bull sales are over, we have a bit of a quiet time till about end of September, October, and then people look at a few more bulls again then, especially for heifer mating at that stage.
How's the industry at heart? Is it in good shape?
Yeah, it's pretty hard in North Canterbury and Marlborough, to be honest. The farmers there's been a lot of cows go, probably because of the feed situation, and the cows have been worth a few dollars to sell, so they've obviously cut back, but the people that have hung on to their cows have been very well sold. Their calves are sold very well in the calf markets this year. It's been great. Price of lamb has been back a fair bit on where most farmers wanted it to be, but yeah, it hasn't been an easy year with the cost of feed and lack of rain. It's been very hard for them.
Buyers, no doubt, a bit more particular in a season such as this.
They definitely are. What I think we've found this year, the front end of the catalogues have sold pretty well. So the people that have had good calf sales, they've been prepared to pay good money for their bulls. But then there's been a lot of bulls sell around that 3,500–4,000 mark. The sales seem to hit a part where they just seem to stop, and they're just the one bid bulls after that. So we've struck that, and up in the North Island, up in the Hawke's Bay, it's been very similar there. There's been quite large passings at some of the sales there as well. So we're striking just the same here, and it's just purely the environment and cows going out of the area.
And of course, as soon as you finish this, you then start looking at ram sales.
Oh, that's the wee way away yet, Rob. We get the bull sales out of the way, then there's just a bit of tidying up, and then ram sales, they probably start North Island end of October, mid-November probably, and but there's a bit of canvassing and all that to do before then, so that's a busy time as well.
Well, very shortly we will be talking to somebody who paid $30,000 for a ram, and also be talking with Ruth Dyson.
You know that saying, content is king? Well, in today's mixed media world, it's true. You need video, audio, photos and more for social media, for marketing, for communications, sales and for advertising. And you need this at a price that works with your budgets. Well, that's what we do. At Tandem, we partner with you to create the content that you can use to shout to the world or video link to a few. Connect with us and we'll help you connect to the world.
We're living on a planet facing almost insurmountable challenges. Challenges we have to face sooner rather than later. The world needs our energy. She needs our ideas, our passion. It's up to us to change things. Make a positive change to the planet, to feed the world, to protect the future, to live well, to be the generation that will make a change. Join us.
Everybody has a story to tell. What's yours? Maybe your family has been farming the land for 5 generations. Perhaps you have invented the next best thing in agriculture, or maybe something else. Whatever your story, if you're out on the land, we want to hear from you. Get in touch by emailing us at info@ontheland.co.nz.
Ruth, mental health, what's the latest on that?
Well, I think that the government has really underestimated the problems that we're having in Canterbury. We are funded at a lower rate than any other district health board in the country. That doesn't make any sense to me, and that's compounded with the ongoing earthquake-related stress that people are having. We know that that's not just confined to Christchurch, it's the whole of Canterbury. And then of course you've got the other financial pressures that the rural community is feeling, and we've got a very strong rural base in Canterbury. So despite all our pleas from leading lights throughout Canterbury, the government didn't acknowledge that in the budget. The City Council has this week started a discussion about whether they will put some of the Merrill Fund money, $1 million of the Merrill Fund money, into mental health services. I think that's a great initiative, because that money was donated to the Merrill Fund to help Cantabrians. And I think people now, 5.5 years after the quakes, need it more than ever.
Because it certainly hasn't gone away, has it?
No, it absolutely hasn't. What the District Health Board tell us is that a lot of people who have never before needed health services are now feeling the effects of the ongoing insurance battles or dislocation from their homes, all the earthquake-related issues. And they actually don't recognise it in themselves and don't ask for help. So it's a sort of late recovery for them. They're suddenly saying, actually, I'm in meltdown, rather than recognising signs early on. So we're getting a lot of that syndrome, which for people who are doing the treatment is a lot harder than people who recognise they're under stress early and ask for help. And of course, the services that we've got in Canterbury just aren't able to cope. There is not enough support for the people that need it.
There must be a group of people and sort of a feeling that, come on, Canterbury, it's 5.5 years, build a bridge and get over it.
Yeah, they may well, and I certainly wouldn't want them to have to live through what we've lived through to understand it. But I'm really confident that we're resilient, that we're robust, that we're dealing really well with our issues, but we need more support. We're funded at a lower level than any other district health board, and yet we've got far greater needs. That doesn't make sense to me. I think the government needs to get engaged with Cantabrians and say, actually, we'll do what we promised we would do, and that is stand beside us.
The budget, What stands out as far as your thoughts are concerned, for and against?
Well, I suppose the disappointing thing for me was that it was a very political budget. It didn't actually address the big issues that we're facing. There was nothing for education, and I think we need to really put more investment in our education system. The ops grants, the operational grants for schools, has been frozen for 4 years, so our schools don't get any increase in the money that they use to run their school. They'll have to take that from somewhere else because the costs will keep going up. Costs don't stay frozen just because the government funding stays frozen. So I think in education particularly it was a big disappointment. There was no investment in employment and training that we desperately need. We can't have young people leaving school and going nowhere. That's just a waste of them, and for our society it's a huge opportunity that's lost. And there was nothing to address the homeless situation. We know that we've got people living in situations which, you and I would just find unacceptable in our own country. In really poor countries overseas, we might say, well, perhaps people do have to sleep on the street or in garages and cars, but not in my country, not in New Zealand, we don't have to accept that. So we should have had investment, firstly to address the immediate situation for homeless, but then to look at the fact that young people in New Zealand cannot afford to buy a house in the way that you and I could when we were young. I think that's wrong. We're a nation that prided itself on people being able to work hard, save hard and buy their own home. That's their security for the future and it keeps them connected to a community.
Ruth, is it an anomaly that we're bringing in refugees when we've got homeless people in our country?
I don't think it is an anomaly. I think that we do have an international responsibility to do more for refugees. And we know that in lots of parts of New Zealand, organisations have put their hand up and have said we will help settle refugees when they come here. So it shouldn't be a case of, we'll just make sure that every New Zealander's got a home and then we'll look at our international responsibilities. We are a country that can do more than one thing at a time. What the government has to get its head around is that we haven't got enough houses and they should start building them.
Let's look at immigration, because that is another thing that polarises people.
It's always been a polarising issue, actually. So I think immigration is different than refugees. Refugees are people that have been displaced from their own home and have got nowhere to live. And I think that's the area that we should play our part internationally, and we're not doing that at the moment. In terms of immigration, I think it's wrong to have people come to New Zealand expecting to get a job and contribute and not being able to find work. So the piece of the puzzle that is missing for me is why that happens now. I think we should make sure that people who come to New Zealand are properly settled, they need a home, they need a job, and they need to be able to contribute. Otherwise, they actually should just stay in their home country.
Going back to the homeless, putting them into motels, that's got to be a band-aid.
Well, I guess it's better than having families sleeping in a car. But what Working Income is doing is saying we haven't got any, because they run Housing New Zealand houses now, they're saying we haven't got any Housing New Zealand homes available. You can go into a motel and then when the people move out, they get the bill. So that is ridiculous. I mean, people on a benefit cannot afford to stay in a motel for a night, let alone a week or two. It's ridiculous, leaving people in debt because the government hasn't stepped up to the mark and provided housing.
But a lot of people think that the government is paying the motel bill.
Well, they might think that, but they're wrong. The Minister has confirmed in Parliament that the people who are staying in the motel will be getting the bill and having to pay for it. And obviously, if they haven't got the money, it'll just start getting taken out of their benefit. This is nonsense. I mean, I am sure that if we worked properly with community organisations and other perhaps local authorities, city councils, as we have in Christchurch, a very socially responsible city council, I'm sure that we could get this problem fixed. But in the end, the government has to stop arguing about whether it's a housing crisis or not and start building houses.
Now, you two may be at a bull sale, but in fact, you're probably best known for buying a very expensive ram.
I suppose we have. We believe in trying to obtain the best genetics we can, and we bought a ram from Willandra in the Riverina in New South Wales for $35,000 a couple of years ago, 3 years ago now. This is his third breeding season we've had with him, and He's a polled ram that did very well at the Bendigo Sheep Show, and he's bred incredibly well for New Zealand conditions. As I say, this is the third crop of lambs that we're getting by him at the moment. The rams are out. We sold rams by him this year, and he's breeding a really true type of polled merino ram, which I think are very suitable for New Zealand conditions.
That's dual purpose.
Yeah.
Tell me about merino being a dual purpose.
Yep, but also for its carcass. We believe that for production, that at the end of the day, it's got to be wool and meat combined, because that's what gives you the bank balance at the end of the day.
Yeah, the attributes of the Australian merinos have concentrated more on true dual purpose and looking at sheep as an income stream rather than wool as an income stream is something that New Zealand's taken a wee bit longer to catch up with. We've been so selective for wool over the merino's history in New Zealand that realising the capacity for dual purposeness to be a part of the merino breed is relatively new.
Is merino meat, is that a niche market? Are you marketing it as merino?
We are. The merino company's marketing it under the Solaire brand, and that's where the package is so good, because over the last few years, the return for the meat product that Mary's talking about has actually been better than the wool. And if you've got fertility and good carcass weights and the prices that Solaire have been paying, it's an incredibly commercial product.
Mary, molestation, where is it?
Up the top of the Awatere Valley. It's 123 k's from Blenheim, and it's right in the middle of the valley. It's 2 hours from Blenheim or 2 hours from Hamner, right next door to Molesworth Station.
And I guess it would be as dry as you can get.
Yeah, our average rainfall is 25 inches. In the front country we're at 2,600 feet, and over in our summer country we get 30 inches of rain. So yeah, it's particularly these last couple of years it's been incredibly dry, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's very healthy country. It's excellent for merinos. And the cattle operation, we run quite a high proportion. We run about 45% of our stock units are in cattle, so it is dual purpose from that point of view as well, and that covers the bank balances. It keeps you covered from the vagaries of income streams, so that's great.
And ACC in New Zealand, we're pretty lucky to have it.
Yes, we are indeed. It's a very good system that generally works well most of the time. Unfortunately, it's a little complex in some areas, and for that reason a lot of people perceive it as being inadequate or not working properly, but a lot of that is just really a misunderstanding of how the system works. It works really well for most people who are on waged or salary PAYE type earnings. It gets a little complex when you have your own business or you're self-employed, and works quite differently in those particular circumstances. There are options, but generally it does work particularly well.
Barbara, when you go out and see some clients, obviously one of the areas that you talk to them about is the PAYE people.
Yes, no, that's right. So we're always looking at everybody's full risks. ACC is part of that if they're self-employed and a business owner, and it's really important that that's taken into the analysis because it's a complete picture that we do.
Hank, big difference between the person who takes drawings off a business and somebody that Barbara Lee's talking about who gets paid?
Yeah, it's really simple if you're on wages. Your ACC income compensation entitlement is 80% of your income. Really simple if you're on wages or a salary, you just get 80% of your income. It's taxed before you get it. So realistically what you get in your pocket is 80% of what you were going to get if you were still working. The problem comes in when we take drawings. Drawings aren't registered as an income. We take drawings out of the cash flow of our business, and then at the end of the year we give our accounts to our accountant. He analyses all of that and then comes back to us and says, you need to pay tax on this particular amount. That information is submitted to the IRD. The IRD then submit that information to ACC, and self-employed and small business owners then get levied based on that taxable income. So what happens then is there's an anomaly in what we're actually bringing in, or what our perceived income is, as opposed to what we pay tax on. So when it comes to income compensation around ACC, that's compensation if we can't work because of an accident, we have a particular problem because often our drawings are equal or greater than what our taxable income is. So our entitlement is then the same as a PAYE earner at 80% of our taxed income.
Barbara, that's going to open up a can of worms, isn't it?
Absolutely, yes.
Because literally you're doing yourself in the eye by not paying yourself a whole lot of money.
It's a double-edged sword, isn't it? You know, like accountant's role is to dial down a person's taxable income, but then that has an effect if you do have to claim for an accident. So part of our role is to make sure that people are protected, firstly, you know, for an illness and injury contract. That's where our first port of call is.
Injury and sickness and injury benefit, that's a major part of your arsenal?
Absolutely, yep. We cover them for their full risk. And
that's nothing to do with ACC in so much that's actually a policy that they can buy and they can pay off during the year.
That's right. And depending on whether they're, you know, what their outcome is with that policy, you know, if they have a good outcome, well, then we can look at doing things with their levies. But if they don't, then it's important that we dial up their levies. So there's a lot in that advice process, isn't there, that we cover.
Yeah. And Hank, I guess I've talked on this program before with accountants who say, well, don't do as part of your package firewood, meat, power bills. And this is exactly the same thing, isn't it? IRD at ACC, you're doing yourself in the eye as an employee.
Yeah, you are. Yeah, you are. It gets complicated because of the way the account system work. And ACC work on a default system. So they assume that the information they're getting from IRD is correct and properly reflects the client's position, if you like. In fact, the reality is that that's not the case. The second thing that's quite important to understand is that ACC not only pays for our medical bills, if you like, so it fixes our medical problem if we have an accident. The income compensation part of it is exactly what it says. It's income compensation. So for there to be compensation, there needs to be a quantifiable loss. So people who have an accident aren't simply given money from ACC, they're given money in compensation for a loss. Again, really easy if you're a wage and salary earner and you can't work for your boss. You've got a loss, you're not earning any money. If you're in a business, and particularly in the rural sector where that business is determined seasonally, then the fact that you've had an accident may not necessarily cause you to lose an income off your business. For example, if you're a share milker and you're milking over a season period and you have an accident when you're not milking and you're off work for 6 weeks while you're not milking, it doesn't have any impact on your income. If it doesn't have any impact on your income, are you entitled to compensation? No.
Ooh, Barbara Lee, where do you start? I mean, you sit down with somebody and where do you actually start unravelling all this?
Well, you know, everybody's different, aren't they? Their circumstances are different, their occupation, how they're paid, all those things are all the variables that we cover.
So you sit down and have a long and involved conversation with somebody and without them realising it, you're sort of quietly making mental notes.
That's right. That's right. Everybody's different, and you know, we're just looking at individuals and their risks and how we're going to cover those risks.
I guess, Hank, it's a case of really looking at who gets paid by that ACC, whether you're replacing yourself or whether you're paying.
Quite right. Quite right. ACC pays income compensation to an individual, and it's based on 80% of that individual's income. It's not paid to the business, and it's not paid in compensation of what it would cost to replace the physical exertion of what it is that you do. So we have policies that are owned by the business. So it's the business that gets the money coming in if the business owner can't work, or a key revenue generating person within the business can't work, so that fund can then offset the cost of replacing that labour. I'll give you an example again of a share milker. A share milker is his busiest time around calving and while he's milking. If he can't do that, he needs somebody to come in and assist or help to do the milking. Sometimes that might be a cousin down the road or a friend or your mother-in-law, but often over a long period of time you need to employ somebody to come in and do that, do the physical work that the share milker no longer can do. that's a cost to his business. And often the cost to that business is far greater than what the entitlement is with ACC. Not only that, remember he's getting ACC, that's paid to him after tax, not a gross amount that comes into the business.
I'm going to stop you there just for a moment because I want to come back to you guys and find out exactly how you get around this minefield and how you can actually be protected. We'll be back with those two wonderful people in just a moment.
Be Active begins here in the cold, clean, unpolluted southern oceans of New Zealand. Be Active amino acid biostimulant, natural, 100% pure, manufactured from healthy deep sea fish from sustainable New Zealand fisheries. New Zealand's Be Active amino acid biostimulant, the way the world is growing. Working with nature, good for the plant, good for the planet. Now that's growing for good. You know that saying, content is king? Well, in today's mixed media world, it's true. You need video, audio, photos and more for social media, for marketing, for communications, sales and for advertising. And you need this at a price that works with your budgets. Well, that's what we do. At Tandem, we partner with you to create the content that you can use to shout to the world or video link to a few. Connect with us and we'll help you connect to the world.
We're living on a planet facing almost insurmountable challenges. Challenges we have to face sooner rather than later. The world needs our energy. She needs our ideas, our passion. It's up to us to change things, make a positive change to the planet, to feed the world, to protect the future, to live well, to be the generation that will make a change. Join us.
Everybody has a story to tell. What's yours? Maybe your family has been farming the land for 5 generations. Perhaps you have invented the next best thing in agriculture, or maybe something else. Whatever your story, if you're out on the land, we want to hear from you. Get in touch by emailing us at info@ontheland.co.nz.
Talking about ACC and some of the minefields that people have to get through. Now, if a business person or farmer has hurt but can still run the farm, how does that work? Hank?
Yeah, it depends on what they do in the farm. If they can't perform 75% of their normal duties as a result of the disability, whether that be by accident or by an ailment, then they can be entitled to get compensation in terms of their policy. And up to 10 hours a week. So if they can still work up to 10 hours a week and still be entitled to a payment. There are partial payments on disability as well. So if they return to work on a part-time basis, they can get part-time.
This is from ACC you're talking about?
No, this is on more private insurance policies.
Oh, okay, sorry. Yep.
Yeah, on ACC they do have some ability to do that, so they do have partial payments. On ACC it's also about not being able to work at all. So there are different aspects on ACC. And of course with ACC they have some determinations that may differ. So ACC in a lot of areas where it comes to accident and returning to work don't give you a lot of certainty around that.
Yeah,
No.
there's even less certainty now since I've been talking to you two. Probably we can't opt out of ACC, it's the letter of the law.
That's right.
But there are
That's
other
right.
options. What are some of the options that you two talk to farmers about?
Yeah, so, you know, the big issue with ACC is that it is compulsory. Everyone has to pay levies. So we want to make sure that they're not paying more than what they have to, or indeed paying twice. So that's an issue. You know, ideally people would be in an illness and injury contract. ACC will cover you for an accident only. So
And not very much, by the all accounts, because of your drawings.
That's right, depending on how they're structured. So things like everyday events, heart attack, cancer, stroke, you know, that's an illness, so that's something that ACC doesn't cover. A big one for people that are self-employed is stress, anxiety, depression. Those types of events aren't covered by ACC either, are they? The ageing process, you know, the list goes on. So where most people, they seem to think that their biggest risk is an accident, where in actual fact, illness is our biggest risk.
Indeed, and it's you're never going to know when it's going to hit either. I guess, Hank, it's really a case of looking at both partners, because we've just really been talking about the farmer who's out there on the tractor or who's in the shearing shed or whatever, but we hadn't talked about the other person who's the power behind the throne and doing all the paperwork and things.
Yes, but up to a point. The most important aspect of any small business is bringing money in. So you need to look at who the key people are that generate the revenue that comes into the business. Yes, they need the support people in the background, and that's often, you know, for small business, husband and wife team, and it's often the husband who's out there bringing in the dollars, and it's the wife that supports that in the background by doing the accounts and the wages and all the other administrative type duties. But the most important aspect about the business is how the money comes in, and protecting the person who generates that money, that brings that money in. That's the first and foremost.
And to whom it goes to.
And to whom it goes to. That's really important. I mean, insurance itself across the board is often a very simplistic product. If you take life insurance, for example, someone dies, someone gets paid. The bit that's a bit more complex is who gets paid, when, and how much. That's the part that people need advice on, because it's all about the right money going to the right entity at the right time. And companies can own policies, and companies should own policies in certain circumstances, because it's the company that needs the money, not the individual, so that the business can continue its function, continue to generate revenue.
But I guess you're looking at people's whole budgets and saying, you know, what cash flow do you need, and stopping the holes appearing in the wall.
Absolutely, yep, to fill any gap, isn't it? And the other issue too is, you know, the classification codes that people get issued with. When you start up a company, the code or the classification that you give that company is going to generate your invoice around that. So it's really important that that code is correct. You know, I had a recent example of a client who was a firewood merchant, and they had him under a code for forestry and logging. And you can imagine the levies were really high on that. But his actual role was the logs arrived to him cut from the forestry, and he just simply used a log splitter and a chainsaw and delivered it to his clients. So his appropriate code was, you know, it's a firewood merchant in retailing. So we reduced those levies straight away.
And you would have had an extra cup of tea with him over there.
Yeah, he was very happy.
The interesting part about that is you can have the opposite happen. So you can be on the wrong classification code that's too low. You go to make a claim because of an accident, and ACC look at that and they say, actually, you're on the wrong code. ACC can go back 6 years and claim under levy payments for over that 6-year period. Now they quite often negotiate that. But the last thing you want is to have a classification code that's too low, and you end up with a huge bill.
So you actually put your invoice in for money to come to you, and you end up paying them.
Paying, and that has happened. Yes, absolutely.
See, what Hank and I do is all about giving people certainty, isn't it? Yep. Certainty that they know that they're on the right code, that they're not going to get, you know, unexpected bills like that, and they know exactly what's coming through that door from who, you know. And ideally things will work in conjunction with each other as well.
It's interesting because, and I want to come out with the fact that you two don't sell, you advise.
That's right.
Because, you know, in the old days, you came in and they said, somebody would say, you want this, boof, sign there. You must spend a long time just working with people.
Oh, very much so. It's really important, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Got to know the
absolutely.
people and what they do.
Yeah, and we've got to, you know, there's an obligation on us to get that right.
Yeah.
You know, we've got to know these things and understand them and understand how they work. And we need to understand how they work when the client's going to claim, because that's the important part. You know, having an understanding of what it is that triggers that claim, and where it's going, that money's going to go, and how much is going to go. That's the important part.
So I want to call it assurance rather than insurance. Hey, listen, you two, thank you very much indeed. And If you'd like to catch up or go back over what they were saying, because it was pretty important stuff, I thought, you can catch us on our website or you can go to theirs as well. I'm Rob Coate-Williams. You've either been watching or you've just missed a very important interview, but I will be back at the same time next week. Until then, bye now.